Good afternoon. This is Oliver W. Long story for A.N.N. December 1st, 1896. The ratification of the 14th Amendment established that all persons born in the U.S. are citizens, and no state can make any law that would abridge their privileges. However, the South began to pass laws to keep the races totally separate. It became a fact of life everywhere. Separate restrooms, restaurants, beaches, trains, theaters, hospitals, hotels, and even cemeteries. We have with us today a man who challenged one of these laws, called the Louisiana Railroad Law, and took his case all the way to the Supreme Court in the case of Plessy versus Ferguson. Welcome, Mr. Homer Plessy.
Thank you.
So, I understand that you knew that what you were doing was violating the Louisiana Railroad Law. Tell us, how did all this get started?
Well, Mr. Longstory, as a native of Louisiana, I joined the Citizens Committee to test the constitutionality of one of the separate Jim Crow laws. It was the separate car law.
Before we go on, tell us what is meant by Jim Crow.
Well, that's a derogatory term named after a 19th century minstrel song where white performers with painted black faces would do comedy. But to go on, I bought a first-class ticket on a train in Louisiana. I took a seat in the car marked for whites only. I ignored the railroad coach that said for colored on there.
Okay. Well, you had guts. Did you know what was going to happen?
No. But I was prepared for anything. The conductor asked me to leave the white-only car, and I refused. I was arrested for what I was told was violating Louisiana law requiring separate accommodations for blacks and whites.
So what was your defense?
We claimed that my rights under the Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment had been violated, as well as the 13th Amendment's ban on slavery by destroying the guarantee of equal protection for all citizens. Look at the 14th Amendment, Section 1. All persons born of naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdictions thereof are citizens of the United States and the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the process of law.
Well, that seems pretty clear. So what did the Supreme Court decide?
The issue that they had to decide was whether a state requiring segregation of the races was a violation of the 13th Amendment's ban on slavery, or the 14th Amendment that guarantees equal protection, equality of the laws for all citizens. That seems clear from what I just read.
And what was the outcome?
Wait, before you answer that, I have something to say. You're right, but you forgot to add about the line in the Declaration of Independence that says all men are created equal. The U.S. Constitution says nothing about races must be separated.
You're right, but it didn't come up. I was ruled against. Justice Henry Brown wrote for the majority, which was 7-1 against me, 1 abstained. The equal protection of the laws clause of the 14th Amendment allowed the state to provide separate but equal facilities for blacks and whites.
We'll have to see how history plays this out and ask ourselves if legislation can ever abolish or erase what's going on in the minds of the American people.
Volumes 1 through 10, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. Volumes 1 and 2, Introduction, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. Slavery explained in the words, writing, and songs of contemporary politicians, abolitionists, slaves, pro-slavery advocates, and others. Volume 3, Politics, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. The institution of slavery and how it was written into the U.S. Constitution. Volume 4, Heroes and Heroines, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. Liberated from the shackles of slavery, countless slaves made extraordinary contributions to society. Volume 5, Obstacles, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. Slavery culturally entrenched and protected by religious, political, and social obstacles. Volume 6, Martyrs, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. People black and white gave their lives in the fight for freedom from slavery. Volume 7, Kidnappers and Justice, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. The law protected slavery, and the scales of justice were in favor of the slave owners. Harriet Beecher Stowe, The Evil of Slavery. Stowe reveals the people and the conditions that inspired her explosive novel about slavery and life in the South. Volume 8, The Legacy of What Slavery Left Behind. War-ravaged people struggle to rebuild their society and come to terms with the repercussion of slavery after the Civil War. Volume 9, Those Dedicated Angels, On the Road to the Abolition of Slavery. Recognizing the work of 12 abolitionists whose extraordinary dedication helped to free the enslaved, these are the people who fought for a higher standard of mankind. Volume 10, Coming Soon, Summer 2013. The Beginning of Slavery. Indentured servants and the transatlantic slave trade. Colonial plantations needed labor, more orphans, loose women, convicts, and Quakers than the Old World could send as indentured servants. So the colonists looked to Africa, and the transatlantic slave trade thrived for 450 years.